From broken English to fluent English. At the age of 20, I found myself in a frustrating situation. I could barely communicate in English, the global language that seemed to open doors for everyone but me. My accent was thick, my vocabulary limited, and I struggled to hold even the simplest conversations. Speaking English felt like an insurmountable challenge, and it severely limited my opportunities. Whether it was for work, travel, or even just connecting with new people. I often felt embarrassed and hesitant to speak, fearing that others would judge my broken sentences or misunderstand my meaning. It was at this point that I realized something had to change. If I wanted to succeed in this world, I needed to master English. Like many non-native speakers, I had always felt that learning English was more than just picking up a new language. It was a key to unlocking opportunities that were out of reach. Jobs that required fluency in English, social circles where English was the norm, and even personal growth were all contingent on my ability to speak the language well. The realization that English wasn't just another language, but a tool for success in a globalized world, sparked a deep desire within me to improve. I didn't want to just get by with English. I wanted to master it. As I was searching for ways to improve my English, I came across an advertisement in my neighborhood. It promised fluency in English within a year, taught by a man named Mr. Wong. He claimed that through his structured lessons, anyone could go from basic English to fluency in 12 months. It sounded too good to be true, but I was intrigued. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. The idea that I could be fluent in a year felt like a dream, one that seemed just within reach. I eagerly looked into the details, but my excitement quickly faded. I couldn't afford the lessons. The disappointment hit me hard. It felt like the one opportunity one had to improve was slipping away, simply because I didn't have the money. But instead of giving up, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. If I couldn't pay for lessons, I would create my own path to fluency. I believed that with enough dedication and the right approach, I could replicate the success that others had achieved through formal training. My journey to fluent English wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined to find my own way. With no access to formal classes, I turned to the one resource that was freely available to me: books. I spent hours at the local library, searching for materials that could help me improve. My initial strategy was to read as much as possible, focusing on books written by native English speakers. I reasoned that by immersing myself in their writing, I could learn the correct usage of words, phrases, and grammar. For months, I devoured every book I could find, hoping that each one would bring me closer to fluency. In total, I read nearly 60 books written by native English speakers, but to my dismay, I wasn't seeing the results I had hoped for. My understanding of written English improved, but my speaking skills remained stagnant. I still struggled to express myself in conversation, and my accent was just as thick as before. It was a frustrating experience because I was putting in so much effort but seeing little progress. That's when I began to rethink my approach. I realized that simply reading books wasn't enough to help me speak English fluently. While reading improved my comprehension, it didn't give me the practice I needed to speak naturally. I was still mentally translating from my native language into English, and it made my sentences awkward and unnatural. It was clear that I needed a new strategy. One day, I stumbled upon a book written by a non-native English speaker who had successfully learned the language. Unlike the native speakers whose books I had been reading, this author had gone through the same struggles I was facing. Reading their account was eye-opening because it showed me that my challenges weren't unique, and more importantly, they were surmountable. From this point on, I began to focus on materials written by non-native speakers who had mastered English. These authors had found ways to communicate effectively despite their initial limitations, and I knew I could learn from them. One key takeaway from their stories was the importance of repetition. They emphasized the need to not only hear English but to actively repeat what you hear, over and over again. This was something that hadn't been stressed in the books I had read before, and it immediately made sense to me. Repetition was crucial to internalizing the language and making it feel natural. I began incorporating this new approach into my study routine. Instead of passively reading or listening, I started repeating the phrases I heard aloud, mimicking the pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm of the speakers. I didn't just want to understand English. I wanted to speak it fluently, and I knew that repetition was the key. Around the same time, I came across a book by Tony Robbins that would change the way I approached learning. While it wasn't specifically about language learning, the principles in the book had a profound impact on me. Tony Robbins emphasized the importance of setting clear goals, taking consistent action, and staying committed to those goals until you achieve success. His words resonated with me deeply because I realized that I had been approaching English learning without a clear strategy. I was putting in the effort, but I wasn't working toward a specific goal. Inspired by this new perspective, I developed my own personal strategy for mastering English. I called it the Fluent English Formula, and it was built on 3 simple but powerful steps. Set your goal, take action, and follow through. My goal was clear. I wanted to speak English fluently within 6 months. The action I needed to take was daily practice, and the final step, follow through, was about staying committed, even when progress seemed slow. With this formula in mind, I approached English learning with a renewed sense of purpose. I set small, achievable goals each week, such as learning new vocabulary or practicing specific sounds. I also committed to practicing every single day, no matter how busy or tired I was. By focusing on consistency, I knew that my efforts would compound over time. Living in Brooklyn, I spent a lot of time commuting on the subway each day, about 1 hour and 54 minutes round trip. Initially, I saw this as wasted time, but after developing the Fluent English Formula, I realized that my daily commute was actually a golden opportunity for practice. I began using that time to immerse myself in English, turning what was once an idle routine into one of the most productive parts of my day. Every morning and evening, I would listen to recorded news in English through my headphones, focusing on the rhythm and flow of the language. I would repeat the sentences aloud, trying to match the pronunciation and tone of the speakers. At first, it was challenging, but over time, I began to notice small improvements in my speech. My accent started to lighten, and I felt more confident speaking out loud. My commute became my personal classroom. I would bring along books, podcasts, and recorded conversations to listen to and repeat. I wasn't concerned about the people around me. They might have thought I was talking on the phone or simply practicing aloud. What mattered to me was using every spare moment to improve. This daily routine became a game changer in my language journey, allowing me to integrate English practice into my life without needing extra time. The consistent practice during my commute started paying off in ways I hadn't expected. Not only did my accent improve, but I also began to speak more fluidly in everyday situations. The awkward pauses that used to plague my conversations were becoming less frequent, and I no longer felt the need to mentally translate before speaking. English began to feel more natural to me, and the words started flowing without as much effort. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when I started recording myself speaking English. Each week, I would set aside time to record a session where I practiced talking about various topics. Sometimes I would discuss current events, while other times I would share personal stories. After recording, I would listen back to the audio and critique my performance, noting areas where I needed to improve. It was a humbling experience at first because it forced me to confront my weaknesses head-on, but it also allowed me to track my progress in a tangible way. After 3 months of consistent practice, I noticed a significant change in my speaking abilities. Friends and family members began commenting on how much my English had improved. They could hear the difference in my pronunciation, and they told me that I sounded more confident and fluent. Their encouragement fueled my motivation, and I doubled down on my efforts, knowing that I was on the right track. As I continued to improve, I realized that there were still areas where I could refine my skills. Although I was speaking more fluently, I wanted to work on clarity and projection, especially when speaking in front of larger groups. That's when I developed what I call the open throat strategy, a technique that involves focusing on proper breathing, relaxing the vocal cords, and using the diaphragm to project the voice. This strategy helped me speak with greater control and ease, especially when giving presentations or engaging in conversations that required more volume and clarity. It was an advanced technique that took time to master, but the results were worth it. One day, I had the opportunity to put this technique to the test when I volunteered to read a story to my son's class at school. I applied everything I had learned: proper breathing, vocal projection, and clear pronunciation, and the results were remarkable. The students listened attentively, and the teacher complimented me on how natural my English sounded. This experience showed me that fluency is not just about knowing the words, it's about mastering the physical act of speaking. Throughout my journey, one lesson stood out above all others. Practice is the key to success. Learning a language isn't just about understanding grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary. It's about using the language consistently and making it a part of your daily life. I realized that the only way to truly master English was to practice speaking it every day. I made it a point to practice in various environments. On the subway, I would repeat phrases aloud, using the background noise as a way to focus on my pronunciation. In the car, I had the freedom to go all out, practicing with full volume and intensity. At home, I would practice while cooking, cleaning, or doing other household chores, turning mundane activities into valuable learning opportunities. One of the key takeaways from my experience is that fluency isn't achieved by studying alone. It's achieved by actively engaging with a language. Speaking, listening, reading, and writing all play a role, but it's the act of speaking out loud, making mistakes, and correcting them that leads to real progress. Building a supportive learning environment. Another crucial factor in my success was creating a supportive learning environment. I knew that in order to stay consistent, I needed to surround myself with English in every aspect of my life. This meant immersing myself in English language media, from the music I listened to the shows I watched, to the conversations I had with friends. I also used technology to enhance my learning. I downloaded language apps, listened to podcasts, and used voice recording tools to practice speaking. These digital resources allowed me to practice whenever and wherever I wanted, making it easy to fit English learning into my daily routine. However, the most important part of my environment was my mindset. I approached every challenge with a sense of curiosity and determination. I didn't let setbacks discourage me. Instead, I saw them as opportunities to learn and grow. Whenever I made a mistake, I reminded myself that it was part of the process, and each mistake brought me one step closer to fluency. One of the most important decisions I made early on was choosing which accent to focus on. As a learner, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the different variations of English, particularly when it comes to accents. There's a significant difference between British English and American English, and trying to learn both simultaneously can be confusing. I decided to focus on American English, primarily because it was the accent I encountered most frequently in my day-to-day life. From the media I consumed to the people I interacted with, American English was more prevalent, and it made sense for me to concentrate on mastering it. Choosing an accent helped me develop consistency in my speaking style. It allowed me to refine my pronunciation and focus on the specific sounds and intonations associated with that accent. I recommend that language learners choose one accent early on and stick with it. Once you've mastered one accent, you can always explore others, but consistency is key when you're first learning. Setting clear goals. The foundation of success. From the very beginning, setting clear, actionable goals was crucial to my success. Learning a language is a long and sometimes arduous process, and without clear goals, it's easy to lose motivation. For me, the goal was simple. I wanted to speak English fluently within 6 months. This goal kept me focused and gave me something concrete to work toward. I broke this larger goal down into smaller milestones, such as improving my pronunciation, expanding my vocabulary, or becoming more confident in conversation. Each week, I set specific achievable targets that brought me closer to fluency. Having these smaller goals allowed me to track my progress and stay motivated, even when the journey felt slow. Setting goals also created a sense of accountability. By writing down my goals and reviewing them regularly, I kept myself on track and avoided distractions. I encourage anyone learning a language to set clear, specific goals and review them often. Whether your goal is to have a conversation, pass an exam, or give a presentation, having a target to work toward makes all the difference. Staying motivated over the long term can be challenging, especially when progress feels slow. In my case, I was driven by both inspiration and desperation. I was inspired by the possibility of fluency, the idea that I could one day speak English effortlessly and confidently. This vision kept me motivated and excited about the future. At the same time, I was motivated by desperation. I knew that without English, my opportunities would be limited. I feared being stuck in a situation where I couldn't communicate effectively or pursue the career opportunities one wanted. This fear drove me to push through even when things got tough. This combination of inspiration and desperation created a powerful sense of urgency. I knew that learning English wasn't just a luxury. It was a necessity. And that realization kept me focused and motivated, even during the most challenging moments. Throughout my journey, I drew inspiration from the success stories of others. I read books, watched videos, and listened to podcasts about people who had successfully learned English or other languages. Their stories reminded me that the challenges I was facing were not insurmountable. Hearing about how others overcame similar obstacles gave me hope and motivation to keep going. I realized that I wasn't alone in my struggles, and that with enough determination and the right strategies, I could achieve my goals too. After months of hard work, dedication, and consistent practice, I achieved a level of fluency that I had once thought impossible. I could speak English confidently and naturally, without hesitation or fear. But my journey didn't end there. Learning a language is a lifelong process, and I continue to refine my skills every day. Fluency is not a destination. It's a journey. It's not about speaking perfectly. It's about being able to communicate effectively and connect with others. By setting clear goals, taking consistent action, and following through, anyone can achieve fluency, no matter where they start. Let's review the Fluent English Formula that guided me through my journey. Set your goal. Decide what you want to achieve and why it matters to you. Take action. Practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Consistency is key. Follow through. Stay committed to your goal, even when progress feels slow. Over time, the results will come. By following this formula, I transformed my broken English into fluent English, and you can too. Whether you're just starting or you're feeling stuck, remember that every bit of progress matters. Keep practicing, stay focused, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Fluency is within your reach. In the end, life is either a daring adventure or nothing. And mastering English is one of the greatest adventures you can embark on.